Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Accuracy in America. I am your host, Don Irvine, joined by my co-host, Brian McNichol.
Hello, deplorables, drags, despicables, chumps, Neanderthals, semi-fascists, and of course those dog-faced pony soldiers.
Yeah, you think about the Houston Astros or something. That's why, right?
Oh, you talking about the defending world champion, Houston?
I don't know what you're doing. Yeah. The question is, can they repeat?
Yeah, it's hard to do, and I look forward to seeing, of course, but it's hard to do. Like it's hard because you got to stay healthy. So now you're staying healthy for a second straight year. It runs into stuff. It gets difficult.
Yeah. Well, we shall see. We are not that far away.
I think they start playing spring games late this week. Could be another couple of days.
Yeah, that'll be exciting to see.
Yeah.
All right, everyone. I love this when we do the show during this week because we've just had Mardi Gras, Fat Tuesday, and then today we begin Ash Wednesday, I guess. So, I'm gonna, yeah, I can barely see it from here, but I'm gonna, since you're my Louisiana expert, do they? I mean, it's obviously a big deal for New Orleans. I mean, that's where the whole thing is, is generally celebrated. But I mean, how much of that goes through the rest of Louisiana? I mean, you're from Shreveport area, right?
So when I was there, it was South Louisiana got 2 days off of school, and North Louisiana did not. It was a great bitterman. The other thing, they had spring break, and we did not have spring break. All those things, all these injustices were fixed after I left school. So now it does get up. But the Mardi Gras, now Shreveport has a big Mardi Gras. They have a bunch of parades, through the Mardi Gras season, from Epiphany until Ash Wednesday is the season. So there's the parades go all through that period. So they have them. There are big parades in places like Mamou is one of the biggest ones. Opelousas, Baton Rouge, all over the state they have them. So now it's the state. It's like 3 days, 4 days of Christmas. There's the state's locked down. Everybody's doing that. Nobody's open unless you sell beer or things people eat. So, but yeah, it's a big, huge thing all over the state now, and it's marketed. And they have what they call crews, which are the clubs that put on the parades. And there's Shreveport has I think 3 or 4 pretty big crews now that they that put on parades and run programs and raise money for charity. And crews end up doing a lot of stuff in the in the town other than put on Mardi Gras parades. So
yeah, and crew is Krewe, right?
Oh, some of them are spelled with a C, Crewe, but yeah, it's an E on the end.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it definitely is something that kind of has become somewhat infectious, at least on the East Coast. I mean, I noticed on the news when I'm at the gym that Channel 4 was doing a lot of reports about Mardi Gras activity type things going on in DC. So it has kind of
always been a Washington Mardi Gras that the Louisiana congressional delegation does, and some of the big businesses here. A lot of people don't understand this, but a lot of lobbying in DC is controlled by people from Louisiana, right? The Tommy Boggs, who was Cokie Roberts' brother, was
right.
Ran a big lobbying firm forever, and their dad was Hale Boggs, who was a congressman from New Orleans area, who was lost in a plane wreck in snowy Alaska. I don't know if you remember this years ago.
It's been decades.
Yeah, and I remember being a kid watching on TV the planes flying around trying to search for him. They never found them.
Yeah, wasn't that was that 50 years ago? Could have been.
Probably 50. I mean, I was a boy.
Yeah. No, it's just it's amazing. And here we go. So.
Yeah, in Slidell. Okay, so Slidell is the north side of Lake Pontchartrain. They call it those north side, like Mandeville and all those, 10 and 12 split.
Yeah, I just remember, having visited New Orleans in the past, not during Mardi Gras time, but we took the ferry, I guess it was, over to Algiers Island, and then there was a big facility over there that just had a whole yard full of all the things from the parade, from all the floats and stuff like
Yeah.
that, and things like that. So it was kind of interesting to see, during the non Mardi Gras time, kind of a storage area.
Yeah. What happens to that stuff the rest of the year?
Right.
Most disturbing story to me about this, though, is an LSU wide receiver named Malik Neighbors was arrested in New Orleans yesterday because someone saw like an L shape in his pocket. And so they searched him, and it was a gun. He had a gun. Okay. Now, the only state Trump won by more than he won Louisiana by was West Virginia. He won by 32 points in Louisiana. So, I mean, this is a state where there's a lot of respect for gun rights, right? The license plates there say "Sportsman's Paradise," right? I mean, it's a fishing, hunting state. And, why is a guy who's not bothering anybody, has a gun in his pocket? Why is that who we're harassing when there's so many people that, absolutely need to be arrested? As to me, it's just like, that's selective. And, he happens to be black. That probably had something to do with it. That's the kind of thing that like people get on the race, over policing. This guy's not bothering anybody, tell him to go put it in his car. But no, it'll lock you up, make a big show of it, embarrass you. Because, it's all over the country. It's in the Washington Post today, 12, 8, 9 states away. Everybody in our area can read about this guy who went to the Mardi Gras parade, wouldn't bother anybody, and got arrested.
Yeah. I mean, who knows? I mean, Mardi Gras time, I mean, there are a lot of people, could just be, could be really harmless. He just might have it for his own protection. Probably not the smartest.
Yeah.
Not the smartest.
There's people who come up to you, when you're a famous athlete, and if you play for LSU, you are a famous athlete.
Yeah. So yeah, who knows? Yeah. So that's too bad about that.
Yeah.
All right. So we will move on because we're basically at the 1 year mark for the war in Ukraine.
I think it's tomorrow, actually.
Yeah, I think they rolled in on February 23 of last year or something like that. So
24, but we're very close. So,
so we're right at that point. It's been an interesting week because a lot of media looking at that, and then we had Biden making his surprise visit to Ukraine and then going over to Poland, and then Putin. The two of them have they're both giving speeches. Definitely different in the tenor and tone of what's going on there. But right. Biden has made it very clear, we're defending Ukraine. We're going to be there. We're going to help them. And that, we can't give up because, otherwise, Ukraine will get overrun by Russia in essence.
Right. And you don't want to fight them in Ukraine. Where are you going to fight them? Because, the Bacchus parade. Okay, that's right. There was a little problem at the Bacchus. If you're not going to fight the Russia, we're not going to help the Ukrainians because we're not actually fighting, right? We're not losing people. We're not losing land, having things destroyed. It's a proxy war to us very much. The Russians are taking the damage directly, but we are not, right? Which is a great way to fight a war, if you ask me. But yeah, if we're not going to fight them there, where are we going to fight them? Because if our response to this aggression is just to back off and let it happen, what signal does Putin take? How does that shape his future? What is he thinking in the future, right? Because, why would you stop with Ukraine if they're not going to stop you? So I think what's going on now is very important. The Russians need to understand they don't have a right to a buffer country. They don't have a right to dictate foreign policy of their neighbors, right? They don't have, they have performed in a way on the world stage that like they don't get the benefit of the doubt that some other countries get. They don't. They can't be trusted. They've proven it. And the idea that and the other thing that concerns me is the American right is saying multitudinous stupid things about this every day, right? We're making complete fools of ourselves because Biden is something Biden's for, so we have to be against it, right? And our rage porn people are sending them a picture to get mad at every day and everything. It's really a sort of a evil, proposition or try to convince them ad campaign, whatever, that they're mounting on this. And, and we're going to be eating the words that these people are saying for decades, right? They're going to say, what do you mean you want to fight commies? When it came time to fight commies, Here are your remarks. Here are your 48 quotes, condemning fighting commies.
Yeah, I mean, I have pretty much no doubt in my mind at this point that had this started under Trump, or I mean, really under a Republican president in general, we wouldn't be hearing these things from these other Republicans, and
Right.
they would they'd otherwise be for it.
Right. And, it's like, have some principles. The principles are, we fight Russian aggression. We've done that, since there's been a Soviet Union. Right. And nothing about Russia has really substantially changed that ought to cause us to change our policies. Right. Somebody told me, oh, they're not communists anymore. Like, what are you talking about? It's a totalitarian government. Right. It's the same thing we've been fighting against all these decades, and they're doing the same things that we fought them for doing. The math has not changed. The places, what chairs people hold in power in the United States has changed. That's not a reason to abandon your principles.
Yeah, and I we could go back, through multiple episodes of this program. I mean, it's probably the one thing that we have complimented, Joe Biden on, is the stance that he has taken here by pushing for all this aid, despite all these Republican objections. But as you classified it, I mean, they're just saying a lot of them are saying a bunch of stupid things, and it creates a little bit of a wedge within the party.
Yeah.
Even I guess Ron DeSantis has said, he wants a little bit more clarity, I guess, on the situation. I guess not to just spend endlessly. What's the goal there? I kind of understand.
That's reasonable.
Yeah, that's reasonable.
It's reasonable to say, let's try to, to try to keep some tabs on where all the money is going and so forth. I mean, you give money into a war zone, it's not, the accounting is not going to be clean. It just doesn't work that way. But, some general idea that we're not being looted, right, and not being made fools of. I think that the Ukrainians are comfortable with providing that to us, and that we should be asking for it.
Yeah.
But that doesn't change. A country is trying to conquer a neighboring country, a completely unprovoked attack, right? That's the other thing that's coming. There's now this industry of backfilling excuses to justify the Russian attack. Oh, there's biolabs. Okay, so we're going to bomb Montgomery County? Because let me tell you something, buddy. You are chock full of biolabs up there, right? If we're bombing all the biolabs, you need to leave. You need to go further northwest, something. So, but that's not a reason to bomb a country, right? It's not. You can't do that. You can't allow this to stand.
I mean, Putin lied about the reasons for going in there to begin with. Anyway, it was a bald-faced lie, and but he got a lot of the Russian people to believe him, right? Because he's Putin.
And a lot of American people to believe him.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's right. Right. That's right. He's right. Yeah. You got to go check on it. You need to go lend support, say, we're not leaving, we're not quitting, and this idea that, let's sue for peace and like give them a third of the country for their efforts, nice try. No, grind them into dust, you want peace. Russia, it's like the Palestinians. You can have peace today. Just quit fighting, right? Just leave, pack your stuff up and go back where you came from. Right. There'll be some war reparations or whatever for the damage they caused, but no one's really worried about that. Just leave, just go away. We'll figure out everything else.
Yeah. I mean, and both sides have suffered tremendously. I mean, there's no doubt that Putin, has badly miscalculated what he could do there. I mean, we used to talk about those beginning days that, here we are on day 10, which was, 7 days longer than he thought he was going to be there.
That's right.
Yeah. Now it's been almost a year longer than he thought it was going to take to go in there. He thought he could just bull rush this whole thing and just steamroll over the country. He misread the resolve of the Ukrainian people, as well as the support they were going to get from other neighboring countries. I mean, he's driven countries into NATO, in essence, towards NATO.
Right.
We're neutral.
Made all of Europe reassess what it's doing about power, right? Because you had to get your energy policies changed and realigned with this, right? And Moldova is next, and who knows who follows after that, right? It's not. They're not going to stop unless we stop them. That's not that's not how they work historically. And I don't know that he gets, we can't reward this and all this. The historical analogy to this, to me, in a lot of ways, is Kuwait, right? The Iraqis just decided they wanted to take Kuwait. They had some kind of, weak justification of it, just as Putin does now. But it's basically just conquering your neighbor because you can. And we went out there, we put 500,000 people in the field and in Kuwait, and we reversed that, right? And that's what we're doing here. And I don't think we're going to be done with it till we're done with it.
Yeah, look, I mean, there are Russian people who are opposed to the war that have managed at a lot of sacrifice. They're coming here.
Yeah, a lot of Russians are trying to sneak out and get here, and the Russians have already lost about a third more people in this war than the U.S. lost in all of World War II, all the theaters. There are about 220,000 or so casualties, and we had about 155,000 in World War II. So that's a lot of, that's a lot of people dead. That's a lot of, and a lot more injured, and a lot of equipment destroyed, and a lot of costs driven up for a country that doesn't really have a lot of money.
Yeah, the reporting from Russia in terms of what the casualty numbers are is kind of like looking at China and COVID numbers and a lot of other stuff. It's like you have communist regimes; they're not going to give you the real number.
Right.
You've got to have independent verification, other people to look at it.
Yeah, we know there was many bombs, but 4 guys.
Yeah,
there was 1,000 here yesterday. 4 guys. Okay, all right, 4 guys.
We didn't run over our own troops with our own tanks. Okay, that never happened.
Yeah, that's right.
It's unbelievable where we're going. And then we have the thing where Putin and this whole New START treaty. It's like, well, okay, I mean, exactly how much has Russia really towed the line on these things to begin with?
Right. That's what I was thinking. Is like you were talking about, like you really can't believe him on the casualty numbers. You really can't believe him on START. But he does put it out there honestly that he's not going to, they're not going to consider themselves bound by that anymore. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that
was a bad one.
Obviously,
that one destroyed their whole country, right? You got to think about, like, after Afghanistan, you had Gorbachev, and you were starting to shut things down because they didn't have the moral authority to govern the country anymore after that.
Yeah, I mean, that always has to be kind of in your rear view mirror. Just like we spent 10 years there and we lost a ton. It's like, is this going to be like that? In Afghanistan, I mean, you do have a country that's very difficult. The terrain there is really difficult. There are a lot of other logistical issues. Not quite as much with Ukraine being the neighboring country.
Although there's some difficulties there too.
There will be, and and the weather's tough during the winter and stuff like that. And it's just I continue to wonder exactly who advised Putin to go and do this and kept pushing him in this direction.
Right?
Are they still alive?
Well, right, but it wasn't the oligarchs, right? They've been kind of against it the whole time, right? So, like his normal, this was a KGB guy doing KGB things. That's the easiest explanation, and it has not been, challenged by any of the facts yet. It's like it looks like same old Russian aggression that we saw, back into the Soviet days.
And I saw something from a friend of mine on Facebook, I guess it was yesterday, that she had some involvement. There's some kind of display or something going on at the Victims of Communism Memorial Museum today only, between like 12 to 5 or something like that, 12 to 5:30, and it's about the war. I guess they're doing it to kind of be on the 1-year anniversary and kind of look back as to what's going on there and everything like that. So hopefully some people will get a chance to go down to DC and take a look at that. That'll probably be very interesting to check that out. Switch over to Turkey for a little while too. So we've got, the last count I saw was about 48,000. These numbers are massive. I mean, between Turkey and northern Syria, that's just, and the stories, that I've read, it's just really kind of tragic in terms of how badly things went construction wise. It's just like, it seems that money didn't go to doing the things they should have been doing. A lot of corners were cut. I mean, shaving, inches or whatever off of pillars and parking lots and things that are holding up other buildings and stuff like that. So yes, they're going to crumble like pancakes, and all this devastation, and then they get that 6.3, 6.4 aftershock or whatever the other the earlier this week, which has injured more people. But it's kind of like devastation upon devastation. And there's an election. I mean, what does Erdogan do at this point in time? I mean, he looked like he had things up fully in control, but this is not what he needs. And it looked, a lot of this, is happened. This construction and the money that they were supposed to put in there is happening during his administration.
Yeah, he is making the point, and it is a valid point that there are building codes. Their building codes are similar to ours in their rigidity and their what they require and so forth. How substantial they require the buildings to be, but they're not followed and they're not enforced. He said, and so what Erdogan says is, I'm going to figure out why we don't enforce the laws that we have, right? And I'm going to put people in place who are committed to rule of law and committed to doing things right, which I don't know if he will, I don't, but that's what he is saying. That's his response. And to me, that is the right response, especially if you're the guy in office and you're trying to retain power, right? Is to say, this is how I will fix that, because it does need to be fixed. It does, rule of law, every place it's not observed, it crushes that place. I mean, if there's one, I used to look at that like index of economic freedom that Heritage does, and there's 3 or 4 others out there that do similar things. And this you look at the countries whose results are surprisingly bad, like Central Europe, right? It's rule of law. You look at the ones that are surprisingly good, it's because they're good at rule of law, right? They're good at the courts are fair, the law is enforced, the cops cannot often or frequently be bribed. Now you're starting to see things happen in the United States because rule of law is breaking down. That's one bad thing about elected Democrats to anything, is that, to them, the law is just what they use to accomplish what they want to accomplish. And it's not a set of rules that binds them in any way.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting. I mean, I don't know how strong the opposition is in Turkey, so that whether or not this is going to affect the election, at all, or by much enough to turn it around and throw Erdogan out. But this, I think, is I'm not. I guess part of this is that I guess that area there's 2 fault lines, so it's extremely it's susceptible to this. And this what was the last one happened?
All the big ones too.
Yeah, I mean, it happened. The last one happened what, 20, 30 years ago or something like that. Yeah. So it's not something that hasn't happened in the past and probably won't happen in the future. And you've got to figure out what to do. It's interesting because, like, in Salt Lake City, the Mormon Church Latter-day Saints, they've been involved in a multi-year project. So they have their temple there that was built, but in the 1840s or whatever it was. And they decided that they were going to go and not just renovate it and bring the HVAC probably up to snuff and improve some things and stuff like that. But they're also going through, and they went deep excavation to fortify the building against earthquakes, because Salt Lake will get, being close to California and things like this, that area out there can be susceptible to earthquakes. And they thought, well, we want this edifice to be here forever if we can. And so I don't even know how much that project is costing, but it's still, I think it may be halfway through the project. And so this is something that's taking a long time. It's being done very carefully. The problem with a lot of these foreign countries, and I'll use Korea, my wife's home country, as an example. I mean, when we used to visit there, she would always tell me, the phrase there was "bali bali," which is like hurry, hurry. And this is how they do things in Korea when it comes to building things. They can build things real fast. They just not be real safe. I don't know what the building codes are, but I suspect that it happens in a lot of areas, that there may be building codes in effect, but nobody's enforcing them. Right. And I think 30 years ago or something like that, they had a major department store, actually collapsed in Seoul and killed a lot of people and got a lot of people to look at things. It's probably improved over the last few decades, but prior to that, older buildings are probably susceptible should they get an earthquake that it also is possible in that region. It could still be very dangerous for them. So but yeah, you have to kind of watch it. I don't know. I mean, this goes to my bigger thing of, watch if you know that there are things like this going on there, you have to kind of figure out what can you build there and who can live in these places, what is actually safe. We talked, we've mentioned before the wildfires and people building in remote areas, and people, clearly have built homes in California in places that were going to be extremely susceptible.
Flood zones down where I'm from.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm sympathetic to, I hate to see people lose their homes or lose their lives, but they took on a bigger risk by going out there and doing that, going to areas that were probably not as safe as they could have been had they been somewhere else.
Right.
So.
Oh, okay. Well, so
there we go. We got an update.
Closer than I thought.
It's good to know. Yeah. So this could be interesting to see how this plays out. I guess it would have been worse, had this happened, say, in April on the precipice of this. Sometime maybe the time frame he'll figure out how to mitigate the publicity, the damage that he's taking right now, and still maintain hold. But I don't know. I guess for me now, Tim's like, with that, all I can think of is Turkey, Erdogan. I mean, that's all. The two are so interrelated. I can't even imagine someone else ruling the country at this point. But it could happen.
Yeah,
it could happen. I want to talk a little bit about the economy here too, because how many times have we seen the tweets and the statements either from Biden or Karine Jean-Pierre about how great the economy is doing? Jobs reports have been pretty good, but other things around there. And, as I watched the stock market, got off to a roaring start this year. They thought that the Federal Reserve was going to ratchet down the interest rate increases and may even stop or cut rates by the end of the year. But a lot of things continue to go strong, including the fact that inflation. I mean, when their remarks about inflation cooling, when I don't know. I don't understand what world are these guys living in when they talk about how good things are.
Right. Okay. So first of all, the lowest it's gotten since it went up in the early days of the Biden administration is like 5.6%. That's the lowest month they've had. That's exactly four times what it was when Trump left office. It was 1.4 when he left. So, most of the time it's been over 7, which is more than 5 times what it was. It's headed back over 7 now. It'll probably be high 7s, close to 8 this month. Gas prices are back up. Food is sharply up this month, like 11%. So there's some big problems on the horizon for them on this thing because they have not really solved the problem. They have postponed the problem a little bit, with the sale of the strategic petroleum reserve fuel and so forth. And so I heard some leftist man he did the right thing. He sold at 90 or 100 a barrel, and he's going to buy back at 70. Okay, Trump filled it at 30. Okay, so he sold. You wanted it cheap. It was cheap, and it was filled. And all you did was send the market an improper signal and, prolong the time that we're in danger of high gas prices, right? I mean, gas prices are still $3.50 or $3.60 a gallon around here. I don't know what you're paying, but, there's been no break in gas prices. And remember that it was barely $2 a gallon and less in a lot of places in Northern Virginia when he took office, so it hasn't happened. We're about a third of America's retirement wealth has disappeared since Biden took office. That's a big, tall drink of water right there. Our market is down. All our indexes are down. The Philly Fed says the actual amount of jobs created, not just people returning to them from COVID, which Biden counts as him creating a job, is in the mid 5 figures, like total, like 50, 60,000 jobs throughout the country in the whole 2.5 years or 2 years plus that he's been president. So that's virtually no job growth at all. That's virtually no economic growth at all.
I like that point though, because actually, on the job creation thing is, I think people have to look at this and remind themselves that COVID has dramatically distorted the jobs picture. Lots of jobs were lost. During the peak of COVID, jobs started coming back when things started eventually, slowly come back to normal. But this has been a long process of getting back. And yeah, I mean,
because the Democrats came in and said we will pay everybody to keep staying home. Now it's like, hey, staying home is pretty good, especially if you can afford it. Right? If I'm not starving to death, hey, staying home, not bad.
Well, the other thing too is that, I mean, it's kind of ridiculous to me to say about how great things are when reports are coming out about, credit card debt is hitting record highs. I mean, this has come back. People who took out auto loans are, they're struggling. They're going to struggle to make those payments. They may have to actually get their cars repossessed because they got, they had money. They had
for a huge repo season this year.
Yeah. I mean, so you can't honestly say, and this is, with the Democrats, using the word honest is kind of a stretch, but there's some definite warning signals and issues on the horizon that you really can't gloss over. These are problems. People when they were at home, the government, taxpayers, we gave people pretty fair amount of money, and we haven't gotten to the point here because we won't get it until what is it May, when the student loans have to start actually that gets lifted, I guess. So that'll kick in there too. That's been a whole kicking the can down the road situation. We've had a lot of economic distortion as a result of these policies that doesn't really give us a clear picture of where we really are. It gives, Biden can boast about certain things, but if the media was doing their job, they would continue to remind him about where gas prices were when he took office, or what inflation was when he took office, and not allowing these guys to get away and say, well, it's where things are improving. Well, it depends on where you're sitting. I mean, if we're going from 8% inflation to 6.4, okay, that's an improvement, but we're still getting killed.
Got a long way to go. I mean, when Trump left office, wage gains outstripping inflation 2.5 to 1. Now inflation is outstripping wage gains 2.5 to 1. So I mean, it's completely reversed. You're making, Trump added $5,500 to household income. Biden has taken away $4,800 in household income. I mean, he has been a disaster for the country. And we talked about the Ukraine. What would Trump have done? Well, it wouldn't have happened under Trump, right? And they didn't dare move against Ukraine or anybody else when Trump was president. And if you want to say it's because they think he's crazy, I don't care what deters them, right? As long as they're deterred, right? So, so now, Trump wouldn't have had to deal with this because Putin would not have dared to try this stuff against Trump. He waited till we had a weak, indecisive president. And really, it's kind of pro forma. I mean, all American presidents know that if Russia takes over a country, you have to oppose, right? They don't sit around thinking a whole long time about what to do there. We do what we did, right? So, my point being, this administration is much, much closer to complete and total failure than people think, right? It is. They really have not gotten much right at all.
Right, and we've talked about, if Trump had been in office, Ukraine, Putin would not have dared. But whether or not people think Trump is crazy, I mean, he was definitely pretty unpredictable. But he was reshaping foreign policy and says, the old way doesn't work. It's America first, and we're going to do it this way. And he took a pretty strong stand in defense of America, and you kind of knew what was going to happen more or less as a result of this. And it doesn't seem to be any coincidence that Biden comes into office and a month later, Russia rolls into Ukraine, right? And you see other activity around the world, pick up from these other nations where they're like, oh, Well, now it's going back to kind of the standard status quo. We kind of know, we can feel Biden out a little bit, but have an idea where he's going, and it's been fairly predictable, in that regard. They think that the Democrats definitely, didn't like the way Trump conducted business, and they thought the old way was better. But look where we are now as a result of that.
Right.
So it's an interesting thing to see, where that is all going with this.
The other part about the economy is,
yeah,
a lot of the reason that it's snapped back as it is stuff Trump did. BBB, all this kind of stuff. People that, there was waste in BBB, and not everybody paid it back. Not everybody who got it should have got it, and this and that and the other. But people were were able to keep their employees on payroll when there was no store open, right? And normally, if your store's not open, you don't have employees, right? You can't sell anything. So they were able to keep those people afloat, right, and enable a strong comeback, right? There were 3 or 4 other things that Trump did to ensure the economy would snap back, and so he'll never get any credit for that, but it could be much, much worse.
Yeah, and I don't know when the employee retention credit is all due to be wrapped up, kind of thing like that. But I get emails all the time about, you should apply for this, or you can apply for this. I'm like, no, we actually probably would not qualify, but it created a whole cottage industry, right? The government created a whole cottage industry with this program, and it's one thing for the first stimulus round, which, okay, there were a lot of issues there. Were any of us crazy about it? Probably really not. But when we come around to the second group, and then the this Investment Reduction Act or Inflation Reduction Act thing here, I mean, that was by the time that whole big massive bill came through, we didn't need it, right? I mean, they stuffed it full of all kinds of stuff. And there are going to be a lot of companies, feeding at the trough, including Elon Musk, whose whole entire fortune and business is built on government subsidies. Right. What has he done? He said, okay, and he talked about this before, but now he's got a huge incentive to open up the charging systems of Tesla, which were only for Tesla cars previously, to others, because if he does so, there's money, government money will flow to him, and this helps Biden out a little bit because it provides more chargers into a system where they were badly lacking it. But I don't know if you've seen this.
It's a barrier to entry. Who can compete with it though? I mean, why would you? It's hard to, if you want to start an electric car company, right? How do you do it now? Because he's got most of the power stations are connected to him and not you. So how do you buy another car right now? Yeah, if all the gas stations work for your car, for one brand of, think about it as gas, if Fords could burn gas, this certain kind of gas, and Chevys couldn't, you would never buy a Chevy because there's no way to fuel it.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's interesting because I saw an article the other day about there's a lot of Tesla owners who do not like this plan. Okay, they like the exclusivity of knowing that that Tesla chargers, their cars could get charged at these stations, wherever they may be, and there usually are 10 or 12 of them in any one location type of thing. They'll take over part of a parking lot at a mall or whatever, and you can do that. And just pay whatever the going rate is, whatever Tesla charges to charge up. What they're afraid of is just that now they won't be able to get a slot in there, because there'll be all of a sudden there'll be tons more people with different kinds of cars trying to reserve and take up space, as well as the fact, and I had not thought about this because I don't really pay any attention to the make and to the styling of an electric car. But not all electric cars. It's like the cars that we drive, our gas powered cars, is that the port for the charger is not necessarily in the same place on every car, right? And I don't know, if you remember growing up, I mean, I think we're pretty much down to, with cars, your gas tank is either going to be, you either fill it on the right side, the driver's side, or the passenger side. I mean, but I think
build it in the back sometimes.
Yeah, I don't know if there are any cars that do that, but there used to be a lot. There used to be a lot of cars.
Pinto educated us on that one.
Maybe that's what the problem was. Yeah.
For you
So
younger people, the Pinto was one of the worst cars ever made. It was a Ford. It was very cheap, so a lot of people had them. But if you hit them from behind, they were subject to blowing sky high, which might have resulted in your demise.
yes, you were basically driving a potential fireball.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Yeah. So
Those cars were notoriously unsafe to drive and poorly engineered. I had a Maverick, which was one step up from the uh, Pintos, and that car would go down the road. You couldn't hold it straight. The steering was terrible.
there are cars that have been out there. I mean, didn't we have at one point in time? What was we got they imported the Yugo here?
Yeah, and last
That has to be like one of the worst
I've
cars
seen
ever
them
made.
hollowed out on the streets. People
Oh
sleeping
no,
out.
this is funny. I mentioned the Yugo, and here's Spencer.
Yeah, that's right.
I think Spencer. I think I beat that. I think I beat the Yugo reference at least to you by 5 seconds here. That's funny. The yeah, no, I mean I don't know. I mean, I still remember my neighbor's son-in-law driving a Vega,
Yeah,
also not a great car.
yeah.
Uh,
My friend had a Vega. He let me borrow it all the time. So I've driven a
well,
Vega.
the thing that he always had to do is that he always had to raise the hood when he had after you drove the car and was going to park it for a while to let it cool down
Cool
properly.
down. That's right. It was aluminum engines. They would overheat. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. That's a good point. If Trump had not, made the NATO countries honor their treaty obligations and, fund their own defense at the proper percentage of GDP that they had agreed to do, those countries wouldn't be in position to do this right now.
Yeah, and I think Trump has probably mentioned that since he left. I mean, during the course of this war about how he played a part of on the NATO side of things like that. So, yeah, that's a good point there too as well.
Very good for NATO.
So, John Fetterman. This is interesting. So this is a little tricky. I don't want to criticize Fetterman. I mean, anybody who's got depression issues or any kind of mental illness, this is not someone you don't make light of this. But my concern there is just that he has multiple health problems. He apparently has had this depression issue for a long time. There are just these medical questions that were not addressed during the campaign or avoided completely, and now we've got a U.S. senator that I just don't know, what to make of him at this. I mean, how functional and capable is this guy?
Wyoming has 2 senators. Alaska has 2 senators. North Dakota 2, South Dakota 2, 8th largest state in the union. Pennsylvania 1. They have 1 effective senator. Their committee can't vote. There's only one. It's only a majority by 1 on all his committees, right? So with him out for at least a month and maybe longer, those committees can't do any business, or else Republicans will win the votes or can at least tie them, right? And vice president can settle votes on the floor, but then she's not a tiebreaker in committee, right? Committees are standalone. So if you can't get the legislation out of the committee, you can't get it to the floor. So we have a month. We can block any more damage from Democrats in the Senate, which it is what it is. Not to dance on somebody's grave, but there are things. If you're in Pennsylvania, you were presented with 2 candidates. One of them is fairly far left. The other one was a moderate righty, right? It was sort of surprising to people that he got Trump's endorsement. Is a guy who's been on TV for years and everybody knows who he is, would not have made a fool of you in the Senate, right? He would at least know how to stand in front of a camera and say what he's supposed to say and how to stand in the well of the Senate and give a speech, right? I followed that thing. I would watch their appearances. He seemed pretty competent to me. Dr. Oz, TV doctor, as people know. And people chose, they got hooked on stupid things and they chose a guy who's clearly not up for the job. He can't really talk. He can't really think on the level that you need to be a senator. And now he realizes that he's in over his head. And that's probably a lot of what's driving the depression.
Yeah. And there's no doubt to me too, that, I mean, I think, the Fetterman campaign clearly used the early voting, process in Pennsylvania to their advantage. didn't disclose, his other problems really until well into the early voting campaign. So I mean,
Kept the debate. The debate was like October 25th. So
yeah, you kind of figure it's like, we've there's a bunch of votes that have been banked. So
yeah.
now the risk for me to go out there and do anything is a lot less, a lot lower risk at that point in time, which this could be, this could be used by other candidates in the future if there's some issues of various sorts that, because early voting is not going away. All this kind of stuff, it's here, and we need. Didn't we have a Republican or somebody come on board, or somebody say that Republicans have got to embrace this because it's here rather than criticize it?
Yeah, Trump is trying to get big into it.
Yeah, so and we just see that this can be manipulated, and it was definitely manipulated in the Democrats' favor in this case. One of the things that bothers me about this depression thing, though, is just that a lot of reaction that I see in the media is just that they're now trying to hold up Fetterman as this champion of like mental health. It's like, oh, this is so brave and so great for him. It's like,
No.
It's like
he needs to go work on a pretty serious problem. And yeah, we stigmatize it in ways that we shouldn't, and we consider those people unpeople to a degree, and we should not do that. But he's you're a senator. You're going to get scrutiny, right? That you asked for a job, you sought a job, you spent millions of dollars to get a job. That it's all about scrutiny. So, Pennsylvania messed up here. Pennsylvanians need to look in the mirror and say, hey, we made a bad pick here.
Yeah, I mean, I think this, as I said before, it gets kind of tricky, but I think the public's general perception of mental health issues, depression, and all these kinds of things, is far different than it was 20, 30 years ago, right? I mean, we have changed the whole. It's kind of evolved, or whatever you want to say, and as a result, I mean, if they had come clean at the beginning, I mean, I think he would have at least. I think he would have raised
that. And you're like,
I think a lot of people would look at it and say, well,
overcoming a disability. Now it's like you fooled us. You ran one past us, right?
Right now, if I'm a Pennsylvania voter, I feel like I've been duped, a couple of times now by this guy already, and so just come out with it and do it, and I think you win a lot of people over. I mean, at that point, it's like, I mean. Who was it? Was it Eagleton that came out?
Left the campaign of Carter.
That was the end of Thomas Eagleton for that point.
Yeah.
So we have changed the viewpoint of this, and rightfully so, I think, because this world is so different, and so many things. There's so many pressures on people. I mean, I even heard in church, during a talk by our bishop, just he was like using the CDC figures about how sad people are, the teenage girls are, and all these things, the studies that they're doing. None of this shocks me anymore. None of this shocks me anymore. I mean, I regularly, are involved with 18 to 20-year-olds, right? And there's no doubt that they struggle. I mean, and their situation is that they're away from home for 18 to 24 months, and they've got a task that they decided to do and devote themselves to. But that doesn't mean it's smooth sailing from day one to the end of their term. They are going to face the rigors of things in the real world situations, and they it's a very tricky thing to negotiate when you're young. So I don't take this lightly, but I just think that this could have been handled a lot differently, and I don't like the idea that he's being held up as some great guy for doing so, because I think he just pulled the wool over the voters' eyes in this case.
Also, it must be noted that Mitch McConnell refused to help Oz, and he was outfunded like 8 or 9 to 1. So because Mitch was going to show Donald Trump. He was going to teach Donald Trump a lesson. Well, you did, Mitch. You did a great job.
All right. One final thing before we go to the final, which is just a quick take on our friend Don Lemon. I mean,
a week on the show here today.
Yeah,
Rouge was flunked out of LSU.
Yeah, I mean, after Nikki Haley's announcement, which was a week ago, right?
Yeah.
Which we knew was coming, and then his comment about how she was past her prime. I mean, even his coworkers, are stunned by this, right?
And he's like, he goes, "Hey, don't shoot the messenger. Look it up on Google. They're past their prime." It's like the lady started to ask him, "Prime for what? For childbearing? It's not running for childbearer. She's running for president." And I think that's
what about Kamala Harris and Hillary Clinton? Were they past their prime then too?
I'm thinking this. Don Lemon did a great thing there because for once, at least all the men in America were united, right? No division on the point that Don Lemon stepped in it big time. 100% of us across all ideological spectrum, like, dude, what are you talking about? So, yeah, I guess they let him back on the air, and he's written some note of apology. And I don't think that's going to last too much longer. That is a really explosive situation. It's like, you're told when you're on those shows like that, to act like you like the people, right? You're supposed to act friendly to them or whatever. We're all buddies talking, sharing the news with you, right? They can't do it, right? They're at the point where this guy drives them nuts, and they just can't. They can't be nice to him. And I that's one of those Stein's corollary. Murphy's law says anything that can go wrong will. Stein's corollary says things that can't keep happening won't keep happening. And I think that's what this falls into.
Well, I mean, Lemon, by stepping it like this, he's teed it up perfectly for Chris Licht of CNN to kick him out, to can him, because, Licht has been trying to, he's been trying to remake the network to be less, political and partisan and more, he wanted to be more newsy and do the other things. They added Bill Maher, which was kind of a weird thing there too, but it
is a complete diversion where, that's something they're not presenting as a news program.
Yeah. Right? Yeah, but he's just get on there, and it's like, I don't know. It's like you go and you make this comment about a woman. Even the women, they're just like, okay, wait a minute. Even the liberal women have got a problem with this. So and I guess CNN gave him some kind of sensitivity training of some sort.
Yeah, formal training, they said, not just training, but formal training.
Formal training.
Wear a tie or whatever.
All right, let's wrap this up. Last word.
Okay, there's a couple of things on here. First of all, we don't know what James O'Keefe, how he got in trouble with Project Veritas, but we do know that James O'Keefe is Project Veritas. So, I think that the board does not like James O'Keefe. They need to go form another organization and leave him to his because, he is that. Now someone that's starting to leak out now, and people are talking about he was doing things that would cost them their tax status. That sounds to me like the early verdicts of this, right, were that he had gone after Pfizer, and Pfizer doesn't take this, so they destroyed him. They paid the board to destroy him or whatever. But and at first I was like, I've dealt with James O'Keefe. You probably have too. He's a big personality, right? There's no question about it. So they've just rubbed each other raw and they can't get along anymore. Okay, that's fine. But he is the thing. You are not the thing. But now, you look at how this is coming out, so there's something out there we the public don't know, right? There's something out there that he was doing. They asked him not to do or whatever, and he persisted in doing or refused to do or whatever that we don't know about, right? That's the linchpin of this whole thing. So it's kind of hard to say, but it is kind of weird how it came down and the timing of it and so forth. Let's see. NBA All-Star game. Is it worth it? The only sport that works as an All-Star game is baseball, right?
Absolutely.
Because the pitcher is not going to throw at 70 miles an hour. He's going to throw his 95 mile an hour heater, and the best hitters in the game are going to try to hit it. And that it's a real game. Ball goes bouncing out to shortstop. The shortstop makes the same play that day that he makes every other game. Basketball, when it's not serious, is impossible to watch to me. And I take a backseat to nobody. And my love of basketball, right? I coach it, and I have a lot to do with it all year, every year. But it's just a trash sport if the players aren't taking it seriously.
All right, that's good. We'll need to wrap that up. I agree with you. I mean, baseball, that's a game. The Midsummer Classic is definitely that. The other sports can't. They just don't do a good job with this at all. Though I will give the NFL credit that at least the flag football, from what I saw, was a little more entertaining than the other stuff they've done in the past. You know,
Yeah.
but I think the NBA and the NFL, they look at baseball. They can't figure out how can they do something that's as effective and as good as baseball does.
Right.
Baseball's the standard setter on that.
Because you can't really play your game. You can't
Right.
really play football. You're not really going to go smash people like you do.
Right. Yeah. I mean, what's the incentive there for this? So, all right, everyone. Thanks again for joining us this week. As always, stay safe, stay well. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. And as always, God bless America. And we will be off next week. I've got another assignment, but we'll be back in 2 weeks. So we'll have plenty of news by then. Anyway, so have a great day. Have a great week. And then we will see you around the horn another time.